Hey.
Yeah. Ready.
All right, the time is 6:30. Call this meeting to order. My name is Brandon Lang. I'll do a quick roll call. In the room, we have Alder Madden and Beth. Online, we have Alder Myers.
Hi.
I see we have some people from the public here. If you have a comment on any of our agenda items, just raise your hand either online or in the room, and I'll call it, or I'll bring attention to you when it's time. I think I'll follow what Common Council does and give everyone about 3 minutes to speak. Is that typical?
It's typical.
Okay. And will you start by stating your name and address when you started? So, um, first agenda item is approval of minutes. Does anybody have any comments or edits on our last meeting agenda? Charles, you have your hand up. The chair recognizes Alder Myers.
Thank you, Brandon. Uh, so I just have a request that the minutes be updated to include the timestamps of when each item was discussed, just the start time uh, during our last meeting, so that people watching the recording at home, members of who are members of the public, members of city council who have an interest before in an item, uh, or members of the press can more easily skip to that section of the recording, because it's kind of hard to go on a search through an entire recording.
All right.
Staff will certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. We'll do that.
I have nothing else. Thank you so much.
I don't think we usually vote on the minutes, right?
Nope.
So we can just,
Usually just accept them as published with the minute or with the timestamps.
okay. All right. Next agenda item is consideration, discussion, and possible action on parking on Mound Drive. Ben, do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So staff received a petition from residents of Mound Drive. So I'll quick pull that up as well. But as you can see, residents from along Mound Drive had reached out to city staff requesting no parking, as well as I believe it was a no outlet declaration, sorry, for Mound Drive. So staff went out to Mound Drive. We took measurements of the roadway, and the memo is included in your packet, but the width kind of ranges from 24 feet across from where Mound Drive intersects with North Gateway Street to down to 16 and a half feet in various areas. The width kind of varies throughout the road. And there's significant portions of the road that do not have curb and gutter. It's kind of a more rural cross-section type design at present. The roadway is slated for reconstruction in 2027, so design would likely not occur until 2026. Staff looked at what kind of federal guidelines were. So the Federal Highway Administration recommends parking lanes be 8 feet in width. So keeping that in mind and knowing that Mound Drive goes down to 16 and a half feet in some parts, right? I think the width is certainly a restricting factor in allowing parking on that narrow of a roadway. So staff kind of concur with the residents in terms of their request and would be in support of restricting parking on both sides of Mound Drive in its entirety.
Staff is supporting of restricting. Would that mean like putting signs up and
Yes.
and enforcing? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Public Works obviously would be the ones responsible for putting up signs. I think in terms of enforcement, that would be a police department action. But yeah. So
Is the petition the majority of the residents on Mount Drive?
I believe so.
It is, yes, it's yeah.
I could call you in a second. I see somebody raise their hand online first. So, could you answer Beth's question first or?
I believe
All right,
yes.
sorry.
I believe, yes, it is the majority of residents on Mountain Drive.
Okay. Rob Noor, I see your hand is up. The chair recognizes you.
You're on mute, Rob.
We'll do it that way. I am the Preservation Sites Chair for the Wisconsin Archaeological Society, and we're the ones who maintain the Heim Effigy Mound, which is a Middleton historic landmark on Mound Drive. This is something.
Rob, we lost your audio. We can't hear you.
Well, we can come back to him if he gets his audio back.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah,
Could you just provide your name and address, please?
Molly Schroed. I am resident at 6309 Mount Drive, and I initiated the petition with some of the other neighbors. So just regarding the majority, so it is, we got all but one person and they were vacationing in Florida for the winter. So if it was required that we had 100%, but we've definitely far above majority. It's all but one resident who was out of town. So just saying if we did need to go back out, we could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, it definitely sounds like there's neighborhood support and there's staff concurrence with the actual ordinance of the street, so I think that makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah.
The chair recognizes Alder Myers.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say it looks like we probably shouldn't have allowed on-street parking on this street to begin with, because it's a two-way street and it's 16 feet wide at parts. So if we were allowing on-street parking on both sides and allowing vehicle traffic short of teleportation, I'm not entirely sure how we planned for people to use the street if there was parking on both sides of it in the first place.
Okay. So I think we're looking for a motion.
Suspectual motion to approve, or how, I don't know how to say it.
It's usually the last sentence on there. So the staff is, well, this one's a little different, I guess.
Yeah, the motion would likely be moved to restrict parking on both sides of Mountain Drive.
Okay, I'll make a motion to restrict parking on both sides of Mountain Drive.
Matt, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just request that we make the motion to restrict parking on Mountain Drive from, and this is the area that we're discussing, from North Gateway Street to its terminus, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So I just want us to specify that is the entirety of Mountain Drive from that, in that stretch in our motion.
Make that note.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? So the motion carries.
Yeah. Moving on to the next agenda. item.
Yep, okay. Next agenda item is recommend member of Conservancy Lands Committee.
Yeah, I can just briefly remind you. So the committee chose to defer this appointing a member to the Conservancy Lands Committee until this meeting in the hope to having more committee members present. So obviously typically the CLC meets on the fourth Wednesday of every month. And it includes one member from the Public Works Committee that's recommended. And Alder Myers had been serving as the Public Works Committee's liaison to the CLC.
Okay. Alder Myers, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So, Mary, do you still want it?
Yes, I would be interested in joining that and learning more about exactly what that role entails and how it liaises with this committee. I can fulfill that requirement on the last Wednesday.
Yeah. So your job is to attend the CLC meetings, to flag when there are issues that you think Public Works will have concerns about, and report back things from the Conservancy Lands Committee that you think Public Works should be aware of. There is some overlap between the committees, but the heaviest area of overlap between them is the Water Resources Management Committee. So that's not something you will have to deal with as much. And it's usually a 1 to 2 hour meeting, depending on how much they have on the agenda. Some of the committee members really do like to go deep into the weeds. So you'll learn a lot about conservancy management.
Great, looking forward to it. Is it the expectation for me to bring beyond a perspective of Public Works any information from our projects to those meetings, or am I just kind of there to provide a perspective from Public Works?
They do sometimes have a liaison briefing portion on their agenda. Typically, the areas of intersection between our committee and their committee are handled by the Water Resources Management Committee
Okay,
and their liaison. So unless you plan on attending the Water Resources Management Committee meetings as a private citizen to better understand that aspect of what we all do together, not really. You won't have much to report usually.
okay.
But if you want it, I'm nominating you.
I accept the nomination.
All right, do we want to vote on that right now? Okay, yeah, all right,
Do you need a second to the nomination? And I will provide that.
okay. So we have a nomination and a second. All those in favor of voting Mary onto our CLC liaison position, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The vote passes. Thank you, Mary.
Oh, and Ben, can you please make sure that Kevin and Kylie loop Mary in for Wednesday's meeting?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
All right, next agenda item is consideration, discussion, possible action on Castle Rock Development CSM.
Yeah, the engineer Luke Mel take this one.
All right,
Do you want to pull up the CSM so we can
Yes.
just have some on that? Yeah, so anyone who's not familiar with what a CSM is, I guess, if you're more familiar with a plat, it's a way to divide land, describing the perimeter of the land, the area, any easements that are in the property as well. That's the general idea here. Staff has looked at the CSM. We went back and forth with the developer and their engineer. And at this point, staff is comfortable with the CSM and recommends approval. or recommends, how do I phrase it?
Committee to
To recommend approval by common council.
council.
On completion of the.
Upon completion of the,
Or,
yes, all the requirements that were listed.
Mhm.
So it's like a conditional approval, right?
Approval. A lot of these conditions they're conditional upon each other, these three items that are on the agenda tonight, as well as the stormwater maintenance agreement and stormwater management plan as well.
The chair recognizes Alder Myers.
So, are there any non-standard clauses in this agreement that have not been reviewed by the city attorney yet?
No, not to the best of my knowledge. The city of attorney has looked at the developer agreement as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything else on this? I know we have like three different sections, right?
right?
Yeah,
The CS.
it's just the CSM.
Okay.
Wait till the other ones to questions on those.
Okay. I don't see any hands up, so.
And just one thing.
Okay. Could you
Sure.
please state your name and address?
My name is Thomas Rickmore, 3801 Regent Street in Madison. And on your slide that showed the conditions, I'm the developer, and I would like to, if possible, I'm not sure about whether or not we will need to provide the surety immediately once the developer agreement is signed. And so I wanted to just have a little clarification there that we provided before our building permit was granted. We're happy to sign the developer agreement. We've back and forth with the folks at the city, and I think it's in its final form, the way I understand it. And so we just like the option to be able to enter into the agreement, but then fund the required costs that are wishing to be paid once we are ready to start the process, just because of the current situation with financing and the money market as far as development goes. So I don't know if that is something that I need to interject now with you folks, or if I should deal with the city attorney on that.
That would be a city attorney question. Yep. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. Okay. I think so. I think we're looking for a motion at this time.
Yep.
Staff recommends, committee recommend that common council approve the CSM.
Right, this is bad, and I'll move that we approve the CSM, provided that the four conditions listed are met, and notating that the approval will be void if not completed by July 31st of 2025.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I had just one question on that completion. What completion are you looking for by July 31? Is that just the developer agreement?
It's the approvals, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds good, yeah.
Not
The four. Yeah, not the whole project, just the four bullet points that are listed.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the CSM, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. And then next agenda item is consideration, discussion, and possible action on the Castle Rock development plan approval.
Yeah, so the plan approval here, the only public infrastructure that's being completed with this project is some storm sewer. It's being routed up Mount Drive, that little nub that kind of comes out of the Mount Drive. That's the most substantial public improvements that there are. They're going to be installing that. We've reviewed it. Staff has no more comments. And then just patching the pavement afterwards. Those are the main items of public improvements on this.
All right. Yeah, looks like staff recommends approval again in this case. So do we have a motion?
Mrs. Madden, I'll make the motion to approve the plan again in with completion of the 4 bullet points notated by staff, and again notating that by July 31st, the approval would be void if they're not completed at such time.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please, of approval, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The motion passes. And then the last thing on the Castle Rock development is the developer agreement, consideration, discussion, and possible action.
Yeah, so the developer agreement, a little background on what this entails too. It's essentially an agreement between the developer and the city laying out, the cost of public improvements, essentially assuring that the city can still complete those improvements if for some reason the development doesn't happen. In this case, they kind of go hand in hand. But this is a document that the city attorney has already looked at. Really, the only things we do after he looks at it are the fill in the blank type things. So plan commission number, public works number, the cost, any sort of, laying out what the public improvements will be. But a lot of the language in there is just standard boilerplate language.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, if there's anything that's out of the ordinary from some of the other developments that we've been
No,
seeing come through.
we typically always just stick with our regular templates. So this one's a little bit truncated just because it's not like a roadway project, so there aren't as many things to lay out in here. But in general, the rest of the language is the same.
And the city attorney's already gone over it.
Yeah, so he's looked at the template and all the conditions and everything.
Okay.
When we go through with the developer, we just add in those schedules of costs and stuff like that.
Yep, got it. Great, thank you.
All right, I recommend, I'd like to move that the committee recommend approval to the Finance and Personnel Committee and the Common Council of the Castle Rock development developer agreement with a deferred effective date of approval upon the completion of delivery to the city of a recorded stormwater management maintenance agreement for stormwater management features required by this development, approval of the plan drawings for public improvements associated with this development, city engineer satisfaction with completion of any potential additional review comments by staff on the plan drawings, approval of the CSM for the Castle Rock development, and that if those items are not completed by July 31st, 2025, this approval is void.
Madden will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? So the motion passes. And our next agenda item is the Orchid Heights street lighting.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. I'll take that.
All right.
So included in your packet were several items you can see dating back several years. So the Orchid Heights neighborhood is an older neighborhood in Middleton here, dating back to the 60s. And if you're not aware, in the neighborhood itself, there are not streetlights. Rather, kind of as part of the development of the neighborhood, written into the covenants was some stipulations that the neighbors would turn on their outdoor yard lights, basically to provide lighting for the neighborhood. So if you've noted in your packets, this issue has been raised several times within the neighborhood. kind of a potential solution that was brought up is that the neighborhood would be assessed for the cost for the installation of the lights. This work would be done by MG&E, Madison Gas and Electric. So this has come up, as you can see in the notes, 1982, 2013, and then came up again in 2024. So Alder Lorman, who's here, has kind of requested that this be brought back to the committee with the idea that the next steps would be a survey of the neighborhood to kind of gauge the neighbors' feedback in terms of whether they would be supportive of this assessment. And at last, the city staff have checked. MG&E provided an estimate of around $420,000 to install streetlights within the neighborhood. So kind of, I think Alder Lorman looking from the committee a little bit of guidance in terms of yes to go ahead and poll the community, or sorry, the neighborhood, or kind of where any sense of direction. And Alder Lorman, I'll defer to you if there's anything further that I should add.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm David Lorman, Alder District 7, 3649 Marigold Circle, Middleton, Wisconsin. And thank you for listening to me tonight. Before I get into it, I just want to acknowledge our new chair, and it's wonderful to see people in our community stepping up. So really appreciate your service and new faces and old faces on this body. So I appreciate your work, and I have moved on and been reassigned to other duties within the city. So with that, just briefly, I took an extremely informal poll when I was out canvassing for round number 2, gathering signatures in my just around my neighborhood. I was able to get about 34 households and to talk to about this, and 18 of those households were in favor of some form of city lighting, and 9 were not. Again, this was, just kind of having a sidebar chat with these folks. I explained to them at that time, I don't know what the cost would be, but it would be some kind of cost shared and assessed by all the residents in the neighborhood. One constituent pointed out to me that they support lighting, but they take the stance and position that something like this should not be borne upon the neighborhood, despite the covenant. And I said, okay, thank you, I'll pass that on. And within my own household on this, it is a split vote. And I won't say who voted for what. Okay, so the guidance I'm looking for, this was brought to me by a couple constituents, and I've made it clear to them that they would be responsible for polling the neighborhood. I guess the couple questions I have on their behalf is, how many people does that entail? Do they have to get to every single household and get a yay or nay? Or do they need to, say, achieve a 51% response rate? And of that 51%, whatever, the rate would be a yay or nay. The other information I'd like to pass on to the constituents so they can carry out the survey is, so hypothetically, okay, we'll say $500,000 rounded up. How do we calculate that cost? Within the Orchid Heights, so I can tell them to factor that into their discussion and survey. So do we say residents would be looking at X amount of dollars on a single tax bill, or residents, it would be spread out over time, to say ease the burden. So if I can pass a little bit of that on to them, that would be helpful. And then finally, I did help them draft a survey, and I want to just, I'm happy just to share this and send this with directly to Ben what the language of the survey would be. And if Ben thinks it's adequate, then I would instruct the constituents to move ahead with the survey. I would just want to make sure there isn't anything missing in the survey. So if they go out and do this and then come back and say, okay, I've got all the information, and the city says, oh yeah, but you didn't gather something else that we actually require to kind of make a decision. So tried to make the survey really simple. Basically, what's the person's residence address? What is their name, contact information, phone or email address? Question one, do you support streetlights in lieu of the current covenant, yay or nay? Do you support streetlights with a special assessment on your property, yay or nay? And then a section for some comments. And that's it. So, and that's all I have. So I would just like direction from this body to pass on. Thank you.
Okay. Mary?
So the first thing that jumped out to me, I guess, when I was reading the history of this, and it is interesting to go back and see our past neighbors talking about similar issues and how things surface and come back up. But for me, the number one thing to start with is the foundation of the actual covenant and the words in which that's written, because that's the legally binding document that we should be basing these decisions off of, in my opinion. So just looking at that, and I'm looking at the memo that former Director Stowski presented, and this is relevant for Alder Lorman as you come up with your survey as well. The specific wording that jumps out to me is that it says these covenants and restrictions are to run with the land and shall be binding on all parties and all persons claiming under them until October 1st, 1988, at which time said covenants and restrictions shall be automatically extended for periods of 10 years unless the majority of the property owners of record at that date vote to terminate them. So I guess coming from a legal perspective, when we're looking at surveying the community, we need to make sure that whoever's voting in this survey also has the legal voice as the property owner at record at that date, if my understanding is correct. So that would be something to note. And then the other thing is, if these are automatically extended for periods of 10 years, does that mean the next time that this can be discussed is 2028? Does it have to be in a 10-year increment? If this conversation is held now, I suppose you could budget for it for the future if the majority of the property owners of record say that that's something that they want to move forward with. Otherwise, I don't think, and I don't know what the renter versus homeowner, if there's a landlord involved, if the landlord is not local, there's a lot of ways that this could web out, but I think you have to go back onto historical record and make sure that we're starting there. But I also agree with the points that Alder Lauren made about if you do survey the community, it would be in everyone's best interest to present them with some figure of which to work with. So the amount of money that they have to be thinking about, whether that is a renter or a homeowner, but I think majority to me would be 51%. So if you're approaching it from getting the survey, following the words as written, and then going from there.
Just a clarification.
Yeah.
So would you say 51% of those polled saying yes, or are you saying to get 51% participation in the survey? Just
Oh, it's saying yes.
Got it.
Because I think the other thing that jumped out, it was actually a step back in time, going through the memos and reading what everyone said. There were two different public hearings, and both of the public hearings came out in strong opposition to the lights. So I don't think it's a matter of necessarily just getting a positive survey. If you're also going to have a public hearing for something like this, that also needs to be included. So it would be a majority of people that are eligible to make this decision on behalf of the buildings in which they own, to vote in favor for this, would be my opinion, but open to other people's take.
Charles, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I did. So I think part of the reason why we have this again on the agenda, Mary, is that we didn't even want to have the public hearing. Like we didn't even want to go through the process of potentially scheduling a public hearing unless the clear majority of homeowners existed.
Yeah.
because that was more or less the conclusion we came to when we discussed this previously. If I'm remembering things correctly, Dave and Kim, and Brandon. And just for some of Dave's questions, uh, about public hearings and special assessments, uh, I think, and Ben can correct me if I'm wrong, but the lighting would be a neighborhood-wide assessment, not an individual one, which means that the quote of $420,000 divided by the 156 lots in the subdivision would be approximately $2,700, or using the $5,000 figure, approximately $3,300. When we are conducting special assessments, the city gives property owners the opportunity to pay it all on one tax bill if they choose. But historically, we have allowed up to 10 years at a minimal interest rate for some assessment agreements, although those were typically much more money than this. I think the only one where we did 10 years was the Parmenter Street reconstruction project, because I think a handful of property owners had significant frontages, and were looking at assessments north of 40 or $50,000. But typically prior to that, we'd allowed 7 years as the maximum. Does that help answer the questions you raised, Dave? You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. Could be up to $3,000 per lot. Repayment period could be anywhere between 3 years and 7 years or something.
Or they could pay it all in one tax bill if they chose to, based on the way we've done it in the past. But the city does allow them to work out a payment plan of likely up to 7 years, although the committee could approve 10 years.
Sure.
And you'd have to get how that interest rate is determined from Bill Burns, because I don't know it offhand. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Kim, do you have a comment?
Yeah, basically, I was going to echo a lot of what Charles had already said about repayment plans and whatnot. The only thing that came up that you had mentioned was I'm not sure that there is actually an HOA covenant for that neighborhood any longer. My understanding was that that had been dissolved, which is part of the problem, right? Part of the HOA covenant, when it was still there, those coach lights was enforceable. Like there was an HOA that could enforce, yes, you have to have this lit and functioning. But that's not the case any longer. There is no HOA. And so there's no one there to enforce that, yes, this was part of that original covenant. But now that there's no enforcement there, there's also no lighting on the street. And I think that's why this keeps coming back up every couple of years. It's because there is no neighborhood covenant any longer. And I think David, you live there. Am I remembering that
Oh,
correct?
yes.
Our
I live in
last
Orchid
discussion?
Heights. Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Right. And there's just, many homes just have no lighting because they don't want to pay for it, or it doesn't work. And, it costs money to have it, probably an underground line rerun to an almost 50-year-old light pole.
Yeah. So if it's not enforceable by the city, and if the HOA doesn't exist anymore, what are the legal means by which these words, like, does it mean anything? I guess that's kind of I think it's, well, do we have a city attorney that can confirm that before we jump down the rabbit hole? Everyone's smiling, like, I know this conversation has probably happened before in several different instances, so I'm coming in green, but I'm trying to understand, like, what is the legal basis by which we could move forward where there wouldn't be someone coming back wondering how their rights in this situation got jumped because this legal document no longer is enforceable.
Right, well, and I think this is why we go through this neighborhood survey process, right? How much, and correct me if I don't think that there's the same threshold that is attached to this kind of project as there is to, say, a traffic calming project where we have to reach a certain number of respondents before that survey is actually valid, right? But at least putting the survey out there gives us a good idea of what the residents of that neighborhood actually want.
Mhm.
Right, and we as a city aren't necessarily going to force
Mhm.
that assessment on there. It's not as far as I am aware, there's no safety concerns other than, trip hazards and whatnot being approached by the neighborhood. But if enough of the neighborhood really feels that there needs to be more lighting, then this is how we go about exploring the will of the neighborhood to actually make that happen. And if there is no will amongst the neighbors, then the project kind of goes the same way it went in 1982 and 2004 and 2013, right? In which nothing happened.
Well, I feel that it would probably make sense to, at the same time, if we're going in two different roads, if we proceed with the survey, that's one thing. But we should find out where we stand with this legal wording so that we're not doing this again in 5 years or 10 years to figure out actually where this all falls, because otherwise this is going to come up again. Like, why would we go do a survey if we don't actually know if what these words are enforceable by law? Because then you're just going to get a lot of people that say this one thing or another, but we need to make sure that how this is written is actually followed through. That's how, and I know it sounds like there's things, I guess if it has dissolved, there's no HOA. I don't know who the point person is for this legal document, but I don't think the city should be moving forward unless it's abiding by the actual wording, no? Because this is what we're being based off, this is what we're basing off of right now.
Right, but I don't see any harm in doing a survey of the neighborhood to.
Yeah, I think it's like
will of that
both
neighborhood.
sides, right?
Right, and I don't, again, we can ask our city attorney potentially about what is the legally binding language, like if there is no HOA, is that language
Yeah.
still binding? That's a worthwhile question to ask.
We'll have to find that out regardless.
Right.
Right.
So,
Well, yeah, we're gonna need to know that one way or the other.
and then if the survey says, okay, everyone wants it, then we already know it. And if the survey says no, then the next time this pops up, we'll know.
Like,
If, is it just the majority that you need now? If this is no longer binding anymore? That would be my turn.
Charles, do you have a comment?
Yeah. I mean, this, the only reason that we had the HOA taking this on was because from what I remember, and everyone who is there, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, the city entered into a non-standard agreement with the developer, regarding certain services that are normally done by the city, which would be taken on by the HOA. Upon the dissolution of the HOA, the the responsibility for those services is just in a very weird space. It's probably with us. We should send it to Matt to make sure that it's with us before we take any action that would potentially impose costs on people. But there's no reason not to proceed with the survey in the interim while we're waiting for that answer from Matt, because in the event that the old covenant is still enforceable in this one way, we just know what we just know what the threshold is for taking any action and when that action should be taken. So we can walk and chew gum at the same time on this one, I think.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
So I think just to summarize, direction from the committee is to staff will contact the city attorney to have him review kind of the previous covenants and kind of the history behind street lighting and proposed next steps. And then Alder Mormon will work with the appropriate residents who want to have the survey. And I can also, in the interim, attempt to get an updated figure from MG&E. I know this 420,000 number was from late 2024, maybe early 2025, but it's possible that things have changed, but I can at least reach out to see if there's any updates.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I'll then hold off with the constituent in terms of having them work on issuing the survey. I'll wait to hear back from city staff on, what the attorney advises. And then as far as and then Ben, if you would just confirm, double check, confirm the lot count, it'll be based on lot count assessment. And then if you think it's as Charles recommended, it's just, is it an evenly divided cost across all those lots? The other thing I'd point out, take a look at that current drawing and just note that it's interesting. There is some street lighting in Orchid Heights, up Valley Ridge a little bit to where there's a bus stop, and down Lake. Oh, I should know the name of my streets. Lakeview or something street, down to the Quick Trip. So there might even be a section of this neighborhood that would be excluded from the assessment project. Or that probably needs to be determined too. Do those people get assessed because maybe they were never assessed and the street lighting was put in because there were bus stops there? A couple technical things, I think, on the city's part that we just need to pass along. So before I kind of give them a dollar amount. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Next agenda item is the overview of 2026 budget process and discussion of Public Works Committee priorities.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. I'll take that. This was intended to be a little bit of an informal, just kind of an FYI on our budget process. I included in the packet what Finance Director Bill Burns had presented to the Finance Committee last week, I believe it was. So it kind of just shows what the budget development process looks like for the city. As you can see on the last slide, which includes the timeline. So the first kickoff meeting with Finance and Personnel Committee was on the 17th. They're meeting again on the 15th to review more information. And in mid-July, we're expected departments will receive kind of budget instructions and kind of marching orders from there. The individual departments have until August 15th to submit our department requests. And then the various committees will obviously sign off on it. So I anticipate the Public Works Committee will be seeing the Public Works, Engineering, Fleet, all those budgets that pertain to Public Works. The stormwater budget I expect will bring to this committee as well. So just wanted to give an overview of kind of what the process looks like, and then potentially get some feedback from the committee in terms of particular areas of interest or specific things that the committee would like staff to focus on in terms of budget development for 2026 and beyond. I also included the 5-year streets plan, just as kind of a FYI. This was recently obviously approved by Public Works Committee and City Council as well. So kind of just another guideline of where we're expecting our capital projects to go in the future.
Charles, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Thanks. So first, there are two studies for neighborhood traffic safety that we approved in this year's capital budget when we sent it to finance. but I don't believe we did either of them. One for traffic downtown and the other for the Pheasant Branch Road corridor and related streets, if I'm remembering correctly, Dave. I think that was your district. Um, I want us to make sure that we include at least one of those again in this year's budget. We have a great deal of traffic safety uh, speed data for the Pheasant Branch Road area that shows that 80th percentile speeds are well in excess of the posted speed limit there. So traffic calming would absolutely be suitable. We just need to figure out what it is that we're going to do, and what makes the most sense. And also, we have the leading pedestrian interval study. I would like for staff to review the recommendations of the Ped Bike and Transit Committee for which intersections to prioritize and come up with some options for public works. The cost of LPI programming for the entire city is well in excess of what we can do in any one year. And we decided to try to replace uh, some of the traffic control devices when we were doing larger road projects, but there are some where that's just not going to happen in a timely manner that we're and those traffic control devices are at intersections where we've previously had incidents. So if staff could come up with some options for us during the budget process for which ones and what costs and what years so that we can recommend uh, upgrades. I'd also ask that staff include a line item for on-street accessible parking in a way that conforms to the on-street accessible parking policy that this committee adopted under our previous director, Sean Stalsky. And I'd also ask for staff to come up with how much money it costs us as a city to do leaf collection. And I'd like that number to include both staff time and wear and tear on the vehicle and depreciation of the vehicle. All right, I'm sorry. That was a long list. But I'm done, I promise.
So Ben, today's agenda item is just going over the overall process. We're not actually getting into anything, right?
Correct. So this was more intended, right, for as Charles kind of laid out, right? I don't want to call it priority items that the committee sees that would like staff to explore and that we can do some research on and then bring forward for a more formal presentation of our budget in the coming months.
Okay.
So yeah, this was again more an informal, hey, this is the process. What are some areas the committee would like to be focusing on as staff develop the budget in the next 2 months?
So you may have mentioned this. What somebody?
I said I had one other item after I said I was done. I've heard some indications that people may be interested in allocating additional funds to road maintenance. And so if staff could identify roads that might have a pacer rating where additional funds would be useful if they were used, having been allocated. That would be helpful, just in case that does pan out.
Mary?
So something that I wanted to follow up on, obviously last meeting was my first meeting and we heard from the neighbors that we're looking for that High Point Road development. I wanted to follow up on that because obviously to me, hearing the history of that, they went through like all the steps. I mean, by all accounts, as a neighborhood association, they checked every box. Again, coming in just fairly recently, I know that the budget was almost like half of like what the actual proposals came in at from the office or from the different groups. And I just think as a committee and as a resident, that's the perspective that I'm bringing, not because I'm like a city engineer or anything like that. I think that they definitely deserve us following through with that project. And as we look forward to budgeting, I'm curious if there's like a contingency fee for these like homegrown neighborhood oriented projects, because I think about how you build trust in city government. And I definitely think if people follow protocols that are laid out by the city, it's not that they're going to say yes right away, but if you follow all this stuff, all of the ideas, road resurfacing, whatever, that's coming from people that are in this room that know, oh, we should think about this. But the people that know the city the most are their residents. And they know where there's potholes, they know where there's raccoons living in the sewers, which is in my neighborhood, I can tell you that much. Like, what is the way to get people to report the things that actually should improve their neighborhood that's not general maintenance? And what is that budget? Like if that man, from the group was saying, oh, this is our chance. And like Alder Myers was saying, if we don't get this project done this year, there's so many other projects, maybe next year, the year after, this $35,000 is going to go back to zero again. So like, where does that money come from? What is the city's contingency fee for the residents coming up with projects? Not the city coming up with projects, but the residents bringing issues to their attention, documenting them. And then how do we include that budget? Is there a every other year type of city project where we have some amount of money that's dedicated towards a neighborhood that's trying to document things that are actually going wrong? How do we report it? Like, do you just write your alderperson and then you guys bring that issue here? Like, what is the mechanism for street improvement and neighborhood improvement from the actual residents, and how is that included in the budget? Because if you were that guy from the neighbor from the north or the High Point Road thing, and this has been a year and you get some money, but it's not enough. Like, to me, that would feel like the city is kind of leaving me high and dry in the sense of like, where is that extra money going to come from? And it kind of puts me in a hard spot because I feel like if you are really trying to like follow through and you're documenting it, is there a contingency fee to cover the difference for this type of project that's not brought up by the city itself?
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so I guess I can start. And so yes, city obviously does have contingency funds.
Or funds, yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of that specific project, right, if the budget was $30,000, quotes came in at 60,000.
Yeah.
Right. So there's several options that the city has. One, right, we rebid out the project in the hope that either costs come down, or potentially as we near the end of construction season, that we have other construction projects that the city is ongoing, then we could, if we have savings, which we likely will from several of our streets projects, we can transfer funds to basically make that project happen. I don't think the intent, and not to speak for the committee, but I don't think the intent was for the project to not happen. I think it was more, how can we fund it without pushing it off much longer? I think another maybe idea if you're asking how residents or how the city budgets for maybe non-maintenance activities. So, right, if there's
Mhm.
traffic safety, I think that's certainly something that there could be a traffic safety line item. I know in previous communities I've worked in, there's been a line in the capital budget, a set aside dollar amount for traffic safety projects, and that can range from anything from an RRFB at a intersection where pedestrians maybe don't feel as safe crossing. It can be geometric changes to an intersection if you want to narrow the roadway to kind of get drivers to slow down. So it can be any number of things, but that's one potential avenue that budget wise could approach that.
I would say maybe we could put a pin on that discussion and have that when we go to future agenda items.
Sure.
That could be one of them is how we get from like a resident concern to an actual project.
Sure.
It's a future agenda item.
Yeah.
And just back to get us back just on the budget, we will have, I think when I remember about a year ago is when we started seeing the lists of projects like that
Mhm.
that our committee will approve. There'll be a list of smaller projects that like the traffic calming devices and things like that. And then there'll be operational budget stuff like trucks and equipment,
People.
Mhm.
And then I think, and we're going to probably do these in separate meetings, right?
I believe so. And I guess a question of the committee in the past, has it been one meeting for both operational and capital budget review? Or
Yes.
Has it been one?
That
Was
was
it
one
one?
meeting.
Okay.
And that can,
Long-
it can be two meetings if that's what the committee would prefer.
I think we prefer shorter meetings
Okay.
based on anyway, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, but we all know that I mean, if we're gonna have one long meeting, usually the budget meeting is that.
the longer.
I think from a focus perspective, it's
Sure.
nice to be able to focus on the capital budget and then on the operations side of things. So I certainly wouldn't object to splitting those up just because it's less for us to go through all at one meeting. There are always line items for those kinds of, traffic calming and whatnot. That particular High Point Road project was a very well-defined and outlined neighborhood process, right? And that's specific to traffic calming. Now, could we apply that same logic to other things? Yes, we could, right? Or we could go kind of like the folks on Mound Road did, say, hey, we're going to poll all of the neighbors. We're going to look at the construction of this and then we're going to get it done, right? And put out those signs. And that's, extra money for signs is one of the things that we had as a line item so that we can look at, those kinds of things and say, yes, this is in the budget. We have the staff time and the resources to be able to do that again with the will of the neighborhood. So it's not just those couple of things. And I think, did you guys bring that up to your alder?
The petition
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of started with a lot of the new developments happening on University and just the overflow of parking that was happening on our street, but we brought it up for a couple of years and I think the older people changed a couple times, so I just started including everyone on the email because I didn't know if
Sure.
we didn't want it.
Yeah,
I didn't
no,
work.
that's fair.
Yeah, I was like, we're just gonna put everybody on here, but yes, we did include,
That's fantastic.
Well, I definitely think it's really helpful knowing your experience, and I think like there should be a way for people to communicate this that they can be sure that they'll get a response back, where you don't have to go through and email every single alder person hoping someone replies. To
Well,
me, that feels inefficient.
there is on the
Okay.
city's website, there is a report of concern.
Okay.
That's everything from potholes to, hey, my tree got marked with a green dot and I don't want it to be, to, I mean, there's all kinds of things, and that gets right through to city staff. And then if it needs to, like if it's something really significant, like again, I had somebody with the green markings on the tree say, hey, I did that. Plus, I also reached out to you because I know you're my alder person.
Got it. Okay, so that's for every.
And then correct.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, so that is the main.
Yeah.
And that's again, I think that'd be like a future, we could talk
Yep.
about that, kind of read the processes.
Mhm.
Charles, do you have anything on the budget?
I lost it, but just as a point of information, Mountain Drive is located in Alder Todd Kalish's district.
Oh, that's Kalish?
Yeah,
Okay. Got it. Yeah, those lines move.
Ben,
Well,
I'll email you when I inevitably remember what I had in my head.
Sounds good.
Any more discussion on the budget process?
Budget.
Okay. Moving on to liaison briefings. Conservancy Lands Committee.
Mary is taking over. Her first meeting is on Wednesday. Thank you, Mary. Have fun.
My partner that he's babysitting. He's not child.
Ped Bike and Transit, we're missing Carrie tonight.
Well, and there's, again, Ped Bike and Transit no longer has a liaison.
Okay.
That we directly appoint. So, as the older representative for Ped Bike and Transit, we did not meet in June, so.
Thank you.
It's nothing to, report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll say that staff have begun discussing internally when to schedule the joint meetings between Ped Bike Transit and Public
Yeah.
Works Committee. So we think two a biannual meeting was the request. So we'll work on that.
Yes.
Okay.
So and I would definitely like to do that before we have our larger budget discussion as well.
And Don Canor is out for Water Resources Management and Storm Sewer Water Utility.
Luke may have some updates.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have any updates directly related to.
Thank you. All right, our last agenda item is future meeting items, agenda items. Mary, do you want to go first? Do you have anything?
No, I apologize if I got us off topic. I'm still trying to like orient myself within public work. So I think I'm just thinking larger and trying to put my thoughts in the right bucket. So if any of these things need to be discussed further, my intention wasn't to derail the meeting.
All right, no problem. Kim,
I have nothing.
Charles?
I'd ask that we include a discussion of the neighborhood traffic management plan process when we have a full committee assembled. I think it would be I found it very helpful when Sean, that's getting into substantive discussion, but excuse me, I think it'll be helpful.
Okay. And my item would be just a review of the different methods of reporting things to the city, and maybe some alders can give us some perspective on how those turn into projects historically. I think that's it. We've reached the end of our agenda, so I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got you.